This will convene our May 19, 2024 OScale Central online program. I'm David Vaughn with OScale Central. I want to welcome everyone. If you've been here before and you are back, welcome back. If you are new and seeing the program for the first time, we appreciate your reaching out. And for first-time viewers, including those who are simply OScale curious, welcome. OScale is a model railroad scale of a 1/4 inch to the foot, 1:48 proportion. OScale 2-rail, the subject of our program today, deals with models and layouts built to scale to run on 2-rail track. OScale Central, which sponsors this program, is a nonprofit tax-exempt membership organization whose mission it is to promote 2-rail OScale and support modelers in the scale. The best place to check out the scale and our organization is at our website, which is oscalecentral.com. Pretty easy, oscalecentral.com. Our monthly program provides news, interviews, layout tours, clinics, and opportunities for discussion about OScale 2-rail topics of interest, as well as discussion between the OScale 2-rail modelers who participate. We send this invitation to our OScale Central members, but as a service to the scale, we also make our program available to any OScaler. And with the indulgence of Dan Dowdy, he sends out invitations to his OScale resource list. We thank him very much for that support. We're going to start with coming events, and in particular, I want to flag for everyone on the call the OScale West show, which is coming up next week, and we have Tim Diebert and I saw Boo somewhere.
Good luck if you can pronounce his name.
You'll say I just called him Boo. I didn't try for the last name, but I think it's Lilleberg.
Lilleberg.
Okay. In any event, we do have Tim Diebert from the OScale West Committee on the call today, and I want him to have an opportunity to tell us what's going on with the show next week. They've been making great strides, and we're looking forward to a successful show. OScale Central, by the way, is going to be present at the show, and we will be passing out cards and trying to have a presence. So tell us, Tim, what's going on at OScale West?
Well, OScale West is happening starting Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of this coming week. Friday is the setup day for vendors. We still have tables available. And if you want tables, you can register online or you can register at the door and we'll accommodate you. We've got 4 clinics planned with David giving one, Rod Miller giving one. There's a 50 years on Tehachapi slideshow that's coming up. And I'm going to get the name wrong, so I'm not going to say it, but there's going to be a clinic on soldering for model railroaders. And so those are the clinics. We've got quite a few OScale and OS and HO high quality layouts open for visits, home visits. And then we've got the Orange County OScalers coming up with their portable layout, and the Bay Area S-scalers will be here with their portable layout. So we're looking forward to having as many people as we can come because we can use it.
Great. It's going to be May 24th through 26th.
Right.
The
and
show's
the 24th
open.
Is for vendor setup.
Okay.
The doors open for the public at 9 a.m. on both Saturday and Sunday. And they close at 5 on Saturday and 4 on Sunday. Vendors, if you're coming early, it's 10 o'clock to probably around 7 to get vendors accommodated. And our website, which is oscalewest.com, has got all the information that we currently know right now.
Good. Thank you. This is going to be in Santa Clara, California, which is basically in San Jose. It is at the Hyatt Regency Hotel, same place it has been for years.
25, I think.
And we're looking forward to a successful and revitalized show. A number of people on the call, including me, including Jim Cantor, including Joe Barker, that I can see right off the bat, are going to be there. So we know you got at least 3 people coming because we're on our way.
I think we got more people coming than that, but walk-up registrations are more than welcome. So
good.
And if you want more information about Oscale West, info@oscalewest.com.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming on the call, and we're looking forward to having O-Scale West resume its status as the California answer to the Chicago March Meet. So we're looking forward to that very much, and we thank you for it. All right, some other quick announcements. Number one, we have an upcoming Railroad Prototype Modelers Meet called the St. Louis RPM, which is actually in Collinsville, Illinois. It is coming up on the July 18 and through 20 at the convention center there. O-Scale Central is going to have a presence there. We think that that RPM modelers, with their fetishes for detail and accuracy, are the natural born O-scalers that we need to be connecting with. We are going to be doing a clinic there. We will have learning tables. We will have an operating sectional O-scale layout. Jim Cantor's going to bring his Proto 48 layout down, and we're looking forward to a good time. So plan on attending that show. If you are going to attend the show, we would love to have your participation with the rest of us O-scalers. We are trying to develop a standard outreach to non-O-scale shows, and we would love to have your participation in that regard. A couple more quick plugs. Number one, this is, where are we at? This is the O-Scale Trains Annual, which is just out, coming from White River Press. Martin Breckbiel, the editor of O-Scale Trains and of the Annual, is here today. It is 116 pages. It is very nicely put together. I really compliment Martin on it. And Martin, if you have anything you want to add, aside from buy the magazine, buy the Annual if you want it to continue, is there anything else you want to add on that?
I think they are running a discount on the, if you order it. I'm not sure what the deadline. I thought the deadline was the end of this month, but I think it's $5 less if you get to the webpage and order it direct.
Okay.
So $5 is $5. So it's either that or you wait until it shows up at Barnes and Noble and pay $35 next month.
Thank you for doing the work on this. It was 116 pages. There's a lot of pages to fill. Some quick plugs. Lambert Locomotive Works is offering a spectacular Lima diesel switcher, never before done NO, as well as a Fairbanks Morse 1244, a Rock Island commuter coach, and a full-length lumber flat. They're all 3D printed. They're really nice. And this month's model Craftsman is an O-scale U.S. Navy helium car. I don't know if you remember, but in the old days in HO, I think it was Ambroid did one of those cars, but now they are in O-scale 3D printed from Beaver Models, which is exactly like it sounds.com. And I didn't know this, but those cars ran until the late 90s. So it's not only a World War II car, but also one that was used by the Navy and by NASA until I think 1998. Atlas is offering a 280 using the old Weaver tooling that's expected in the fourth quarter of this year. There's a review in O-Scale Trains Annual. Witten Wisdom Models is offering a 3D printed pair of Crown trucks, as well as Vulcan and ASF ride control. Intermountain wheel sets, also 3D printed, and those fit Lambert Locomotive Works Pennsy G39 or Jenny's. And finally, check out 3dcentral.com. They are doing a lot of multi-scale projects. 3dcentral.com. All right. I want to see, first of all, is Scott Mann yet on the call? I did not see Scott come in, but he is supposed to join us. Scott. All right, I don't see him yet, but we are very honored to have Phil Endholm with us today. I want to just give a brief background and introduction. We've received a good number of inquiries from O-scalers when we are likely to have another O-scale national convention. And the short answer is, given the travel costs, given the hotel costs, given the gas prices, given our members' relatively limited mobility and the fact that they are spread out so thin, it is very difficult in this environment to be thinking about an in-person O-scale national convention. The Denver O-scale show was a critical success, but not a business success, and it's going to be tough to do it the old-fashioned way. The Denver show in 2023 was the 53rd O-scale national convention, but it is going to be difficult to do it the old-fashioned way. That said, the technology that allows us to be here on Zoom, gathered from all over the country, is something that is adaptable to the kind of things that we have historically done in O-scale. And no one is better at this in a model train context than Phil Endholm, who is the NMRA's Pacific Coast Region head. He has been working on online and hybrid conventions. O-scale Central recently participated as a sponsor of a hybrid O-scale hybrid convention, multi-scale, that he had. And Phil, I've asked Phil to share with the audience a quick, a little bit more abbreviated than he gave to the O Scale Central Board last week. But I'd like to have him share his thinking with you. We need to dig into this. We need your thoughts and your feedbacks and your questions as we try and come up with new ways to bring the O Scale community together. A hybrid or virtual convention may be a way to do that. Phil, tell us about how this might work, and thank you very much for being here.
Cool. Thanks, David. So I'm going to share my screen here and share a couple of thoughts here before we, hang on, I got to get to the right slide here. I'm at the wrong place in what I wanted to do, which happens occasionally. There it is. Seems like it happens more often now lately. So let me talk a little bit about what we did during the convention. This is about 2 weeks ago now. So basically we were doing a physical convention already. So that's a very important thing. We're going to talk about in a moment, hybrid versus virtual. Because we were doing a physical convention, one of the key goals was to extend the values of the physical convention into a virtual audience. So everybody knew they were attending a physical convention. It was clear, very different than a virtual convention, I'll talk about in a second. So to do that, we had a typical NMRA regional convention, 3 clinic rooms. We did it with clinics in the morning, clinics in the evening, afternoons free for layout tours and prototype tours, etc. What we did was we virtualized the physical experience by doing really a set of things that kind of magnified that. The first is we took one of the clinic rooms and we turned it into a virtual clinic set. So essentially there was a clinic and you would join a Zoom meeting just like this. A clinic would happen at a certain time and you in the meeting would be able to see the clinic all together as a group. At the end of the clinic, that would go away, and then you could talk as a group until the next clinic came on. So it's kind of a combination of what we call a gathering room and a clinic room. And this is a really important context. There's a very important difference, if you've never been involved, between a Zoom meeting like this, where David talked, now I'm talking, somebody else is going to talk. It's kind of a one-to-many broadcast. A convention is different because when you walk around, there are literally 20 or 30 conversations going on. So the way we've replicated that here was to create these breakouts. So in Zoom, you can have a breakout room. And a breakout room is basically a Zoom meeting. So if 3 of us were to leave this meeting and go to a breakout meeting, there would just be the 3 of us in that meeting. And then when we get done, we can come back to the main meeting. So we created a set of breakout rooms. The reason to do this is it creates that what I'm going to call interaction, smaller group interaction, you get at a convention. So we did, for example, the clinic goes on. So when a clinician gets done presenting, they can go into would physically go to a separate area on a computer. If it's a virtual convention, they would go just into a breakout room. That computer is into a breakout room. So at the end of the clinic, if you want to talk more, you can actually go into the breakout room and talk to that clinician. We did association breakouts. So David was involved in one of these. We typically had 2 or 3 going on at a time. There would be a couple of vendors, an association. And the way to think about this is it's not a Zoom meeting. It's a lot more like, a hotel during a convention where you got hotel suites. So you may have 3 or 4 companies that have meetings going on and you can walk between them and walk in and talk to people. And so it's just kind of the idea of you get interactions. And we had 20 to 30 people in some of these breakouts of a convention that had 83 registrants. And then the last thing we did was we did this concept of a virtual train show. And this was the idea of having vendors basically do a little bit of pre-publicity about themselves and then come in and go into a breakout. And some of the vendors reported, again, having 20 to 30 people come in and talk to them about their kits and stuff in the breakouts. One of the things that was really interesting about this was that when you look at the vendors that participated, almost all of them, I think all of them have some either scale agnostic like model railroad control systems or have O-scale products. So, I think this is a very interesting thing is that you can introduce vendors into the community, and all of these things can be done either in a virtual or a hybrid convention. The reason why I think to do a hybrid experience and do a hybrid is because you already have a physical thing going on. The other convention that we did was the 2021 NMRA National. Now that had about 650 registrants. It was a fairly large convention, fairly expensive to go to. It was in the middle of COVID when there were no other options. I'm not sure you can do exactly the same thing today, but I think for O-scale, it becomes very interesting. I'll talk about that in a moment. What we did there was a little different because we had so many people. We did what we called a Great Hall, which was basically a Zoom meeting with a whole bunch of breakouts in it. And you can see all these breakouts down here that we had set up. And the idea was that you would come to the Great Hall and then you would jump over into one of these two meeting tracks. And these were actually Zoom, what are called webinars by Zoom. But the idea is, again, to create the concept, and it's this, there's a psychological thing that happens that if you haven't participated in it, you don't really understand until you do, which is you don't perceive yourself as going to a Zoom meeting anymore. You perceive yourself as going to an event, and the Zoom meetings are just a series of ways of participating in the event. And so it really becomes really cool from a national, I think from a national, international perspective, to think about doing this for O-scale. This was the breakout rooms we had. We had a whole bunch of breakout rooms. And again, the more people you have in the more breakout rooms, the more you have opportunities for people to go as a small group and interact. And we had people that had never met each other from all over the country, all over the world, that ended up having ongoing conversations because they met in one of these sessions. I think the question you guys need to ask, I think O-scale needs to ask, and maybe we, because I'm an ON30 and O-scale modeler primarily, is can you create enough inertia to have a physical event to extend as a virtual participation? Or is the better way to focus on a virtual event? And I think that there's two thought processes here probably need to think about. One is, how distributed the folks are and the number you need to get together to have a successful event. The second is, if you've heard the concept of a Venn diagram, think about the Venn diagram of O-scale in model railroading and all the other Venn diagrams that overlap with O-scale. And I think that's the question is, as an event, if I can go to one convention a year and I'm a narrow gauge modeler, I choose the narrow gauge convention over an O-scale convention. On the other hand, if the O-scale convention, the national or international global O-scale convention was virtual, then it becomes a lot easier to participate. And I'll close with just the last slide. We started with this with the board, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but there's a whole bunch of learnings that I think can be communicated over about how to do a great event. But I think the idea of doing 2 or 3, or maybe thinking about how do you virtualize an event that's already happening, the Chicago event or the or O-scale West might be another interesting thought. I mean, I think the thing is, the question is, can you create a national event that has enough capability to draw to make it cost effective? Having gone through the convention, just to let you guys know, our food and beverage cost for a regional PCR convention went up by almost double. Actually, probably by the time it got done, it was double from 2020 to 2024. So cost structures are going to go up, and they're going to continue to go up. So, getting people to come to a physical location, I think, is a challenge. I think on the other hand, O-scale has this real high capability to get people there virtually from all over. So anyway, that would be my thoughts, David. I'll throw it back to you. I think it's a really interesting option to think for, since you're not O-scale is not a physically focused, thing like a PCR convention or a regional convention. It's something that doing virtual would let a large number of people participate and participate in both dimensions. Because I think that's the thing that, I think there are 3 things that you can bring together to get people excited. I mean, you can bring together a viewership or participant attendeeship. I think you can bring together the clinicians. I mean, we had a couple of virtual clinicians done by a clinician in New Zealand. And so I think, the idea that you can bring together those kinds of things and then bring in, the idea of the vendors, because I think there are lots of vendors, and, we partnered with Jim Kello and Nutrax to just kind of kick that off. And probably he'd be more than glad to participate with that as well. The idea of basically bringing a lot of vendors in, and, over 3 days, you can have, a couple of clinic slots, then you can have a breakout slot, and you have 3 or 4 vendors in breakout rooms and have opportunities to go meet with them and talk to them. I think it creates really an O-scale event that anybody can go to, and could become very cost effective, and I think great participation. Anyway, enough said, David. Back to you. I think I've tried to sell the concept enough.
Thank you, Phil. This is an opportunity to get some feedback from the guys who are actually going to show up at our virtual or hybrid convention, or not. And it would be great if we could get some feedback from you, and some either questions or comments that will help not only Phil, but will help me and the board at O-Scale Central figure out how we can participate in the technology and keep building the O-Scale community, even though we may not be able to physically get to the places that we would like to with a O-Scale National Convention. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, I think
Usually-
I have one, David. When you have a big online event, and if you're lucky enough to have a big online community to start with, say for instance, like Ken Burney's Facebook group that has 2,800 members, then you kind of have a really good place to start from. But what I was going to ask is to Phil is, how do you go about the registration process and then let people in? And is there any sort of like registration fee for being able to access the program?
So what we did, so there are 2 different models here. The model for the national was the national had a $50 fee for attending. It was an NMRA national, so it was perceived that was a reasonable fee. For what we did for our hybrid, we made it a $30 fee, and we gave a lot of people discounts. I'm a big believer in discounts. People like to do things that save them money. It causes action, and discounts with time limits are even better because they cause action immediately. So, it was 20 to 30 bucks was the cost. We did the registrations through RegFox, which is the registration system the PCR uses. Quite frankly, I would use Eventbrite if it were me, for an event like yours. If you're under 100 people, it's pretty easy to do it in Zoom. So what we did is we mandated that when everybody came in, they had to put their name up on their name board, and we explained to them how to do it. And we just had an attendee list, and if everybody puts their name up, it becomes pretty clear who's here. And if somebody, you can throw people out if you want to. We haven't really had a problem with that. We just sent out, basically sent a bunch of emails out with the links. So we don't put the links up publicly. They're not up in a public location. They go out in email. As you get the email, as you get the links. There is a webinar product from Zoom, and there are some products they do for more managing these kind of meetings that do more subscription level control management. There are additional costs to that. Quite frankly, for what we did, we just used my Zoom account. And I have a Zoom account I was a consultant in this space, so I have a very close relationship with Zoom and the other competitors in this space. And so we just use that because it turns out it's also higher resolution. It's a 720p account. So Um, you know, that makes it very inexpensive, but that was under 100. If we get up, if you get up to 200, 300, like we were for the national, having some of those tools available where you can give people something that actually has a tracking on it, so you know when they come in, you can use. There are a lot of tools in that space.
Thanks.
You know, and I think the question that's an interesting question is, you know, of the folks that are here, you guys are a good community. Does everybody know how to use the reactions down at the bottom of the screen? So down at the bottom of the screen, see the little thing that says reaction, looks like a clown or something. If you click on reactions, well, you'll get a thing there and you can raise your hand. So raise your hand if you would go to a national convention. There was a virtual national convention. Let David, because he can count these. There's a couple of screens here and you can count, because all the hands go to the front. So you kind of can see. So, I mean, the question that's an interesting question is, you know, there are what right now about 38 participants here, and it looks like you've got about 10 people that said they would go. Now that may mean that there's 20 people who can't figure out what pushing reactions and pushing raise your hand means, but I think the perspective here that's really interesting, and Paul's clapping, which is even more important. So I mean, so you're probably at about 20 to 30% of the, you know, the O-scale community, if this is representative, would go, maybe a little higher. So, you know, that's an interesting kind of, I think that's an interesting data point for
I suspect that a fair number of people are still looking for the box that says reactions, which is about
or just
two-thirds,
raise your hand.
three-quarters of the way across the bottom of the screen. If you click on that, one of the options you get is raise your hand. So maybe if nothing else, we should do that in order to make everybody more conversant with the
Zoom.
the toolbar down on the bottom of the screen. So if you would consider participating in a virtual national convention like that, put up your hand.
So you're well over half now. So, you know, I think David, you know, I think there's a perspective that says that if you do an event and you plan it out a bit of time, don't do it as a rush, it can be a great event. I mean, I think you can really can have, you know, an opportunity for a lot of people to participate, and, you know, you do it over 2 or 3 days, and you can do it over a weekend, you know, and that way, you know, a lot of people, even if they're working, can participate in a lot of the event.
Yeah, and some parts of what we think of as a traditional in-person event are better to translate than others. So a clinic can be well planned and visually effective. Layout tours probably need to be canned. The idea of somebody carrying a camera around, walking up and down the stairs, and doing the duck unders and so on is probably a little bit more problematic. Would you talk briefly, Phil, if you have any experience with this, with trying to allow dealers um, in a virtual convention to have some kind of presentation? And I'm not sure I'm asking asking the question in the right way.
So what we did and what we tried, and I think it worked reasonably well. And I'll put the link up in the chat, and you guys can go look at it. So we did what we called a virtual train show, and we asked each of the vendors. We charged them a nominal sum, $30, wasn't a lot of money. I just like everybody to have a little skin in the game. So we charged a little bit for them to participate. I see this as, quite frankly, as more of a draw for people to attend than as a revenue producer from the vendors. But the idea was they would produce, or we would produce with them as an interview format, a 10-minute video about their company. is about 50-50. I think of the groups, about half produced their own video, about half did an interview video. What we did was we grouped those up and played them during kind of the lunchtime break times of the virtual convention. So, and it was kind of advertised that they would play at a certain time. And they were also, though, they're online. So like I said, I'll put a link up to the website. So they're all online so you can watch them. So you say, you know, I'm curious that, probably most of you are Osceolers, so you probably know Dennis Brennan. But if you've heard of Dennis Brennan, you don't know what Dennis Brennan does, you can click on the video and listen to it for 10 minutes, get a pretty good idea of what Dennis Brennan does beyond what you would get on his website. And then the idea is that there's now an hour breakout where that vendor is in a breakout room. So again, imagine them being in a hotel suite with their name on this door outside, and you can walk down the hallway and go in the hotel suite and talk to them. That's basically the way a breakout room is. You click on breakouts, and there'll be a list, and there'll be vendor room 1, or it'll probably even say the name of the vendor, right? And you just click on there, and you're immediately in the room with the vendor talking to him. You say, hey, I've been thinking about this kind of a kit, or this kind of a question, or, if you're looking at building something that's from Daryl Lambert or Dylan Lambert, you go ask him, how does this work? How do I assemble this? So I think the concept of doing a bigger virtual trade show, I mean, the cool thing is for the 10 vendors I showed you, their videos are pretty much in the can. So having them participate is almost no effort whatsoever, except for them coming to a breakout. If you start, ahead of time, have some time and work through it, I think you could have 20 or 30 vendors easy. And the cool thing about the vendors is that because you have multiple in a breakout room at the same time, it's not like doing a presentation. It's not like coming and doing a clinic presentation. Everybody has to watch it. It's you go to the room and you meet with them. And what I couch the vendors to do is get all the pictures of what you do in a slideshow. And then what you can do is you can jump around using the slideshow presenter view. You can jump around. Somebody asks a question about one of your kits, or, if you sell ballast, what your ballast looks like, or what a figure looks like. You can click and go jump to that image and then share it in the breakout room. So it's this idea of an interaction with the vendor. That's the thing you get at a convention, is that idea you can walk up to the vendor's stall or table or whatever it is, and you can actually have a conversation with them, and they can show you something and answer your question. And you can replicate that exact experience in this concept of a breakout room with multiple breakout rooms. And once people do it and experience for a day, all of a sudden it becomes natural. You come into the gathering room and you look at the breakouts. And by the way, when you click on the breakouts, what's really cool is it tells you who's in each breakout room. So if you've been wanting to talk to Bob Smith and you saw he was at the convention, you click and you see he's in breakout room 1, you can go stalk him in breakout room 1. So no, it's really interesting. If you create the right structure, this becomes a really cool environment. And you have to have 2 things. You have to create the right structure. The second thing you have to have is you have to have people that will manage it and run it. And it does take some specific skills in Zoom and that will take some time. If you came to our convention, Sydney managed the room, which is really what you need, is someone there's always got to be a host in that great hall room. If you've got clinics, you kind of need a host in the clinic room just to kind of manage that. The breakout rooms kind of become self-hosting. So,
Oh, good. Well, thank
anyway,
you,
enough said.
Phil.
Too much detail.
Any questions or comments by way of a wrap up? We are going to be looking at this, and we're going to try and fill some of the hole that might otherwise be left from the missing O-Scale National conventions.
David, this is Charles. The only disadvantage I see is one of the things I really enjoy at the train show is to go in and finding the deals that people have. It's not manufacturers or anything like that. And although I am a manufacturer of cutting devices, it's nice to go find the deals and people trying just to sell something to get rid of it that you really want, you can get it cheap. Like in Denver, there was a guy put 4 brass engines out on a table and had the highest price was $150 and 3 of them were $125. And I jumped on 2 of them, and then a couple other guys bought the other 2, within 10 minutes after he put them out. But that's the kind of stuff you find at trade shows that you can't find in a virtual meeting.
That's true, and you forgot the part about sharing a beer with your buddies. I mean, I guess you can do
That's a
that
big deal right there,
virtually,
yeah.
but works better in person.
Sure
So
does.
good points. There are obviously limitations on it. But Phil, thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. And if somebody gets a wild thought tonight, email me on my email is on the website. Love to get input, and we will try and come up with a product that makes sense for everybody. So thank you very much, Phil. Appreciate it with you and with Sydney. Before we move along, I want to recognize a distinguished international visitor, and that is Santiago Pena. And wave for the audience if you would. Santiago, where'd he go?
I'm right here. Thank you.
Okay. Santiago came to the O-Scale National in Denver and did a terrific clinic on CB&Q. And Santiago is a U.S. modeler who is from Colombia, and I assume that you are appearing on Zoom from home. Is that right?
That's right. I'm here in Bogota, Colombia.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining us, and we are pleased to have you.
Thank you, David.
Looking around, I do not see our guest of honor, Scott Mann, and I had communication with him, and in fact, Greg sent him a reminder email this morning, and I texted him while we were hearing from Phil, and I have not seen him, and I have no explanation. Scott's a responsible guy. I'm not sure where the disconnect is, but in any event, we appreciate him making the commitment. He has a large shipment coming in, which includes an extensive run of SD40-2s and Amtrak Superliner cars, among other things. And I was looking forward to having him talk about that. The container due date coming from China is, I think, June 3rd. So it is just around the corner. If you have orders in, he's bugging everybody to pay him. And he still will probably have a small number of engines available for purchase, even without reservation, although he tries to keep that fairly close. We do have on the call Skylar Shippey, and Skylar has been constructing, he designed, he constructed, and he's been taking around to shows, including the Chicago March Meet, a modular layout. He is actually on the program for next week. And when I found we did not have next month, and when I found we did not have Scott Mann on the call, I texted Skylar and said, "Can you stand in?" Unfortunately, the logistics don't work because he's got a good PowerPoint that explains the project. but I wonder, Skylar, if you might give us a preview of next month's show. Just tell us what you're going to be able to tell us next month.
Yeah, so I did a clinic for the 2022 or no, excuse me, 23 Chicago show, explaining the progress that I had up to that point. The layout at that point was only 7 months old. So the addition that we made is we built a 2 different sections of transition pieces for a bridge that's roughly 6 foot long, I think 72.5 inches. And that was featured at this past Chicago show. So the presentation for next month is going to include the beginning of the designing all the way up to the bridge module being included. So looking forward to it.
Great. And we are probably going to wind up with a somewhat shorter show than we did because Scott is not able to join us. But I do want to flag a few things that we are working on right now and make a request for your participation. This organization runs on volunteers. We have been incredibly lucky to have some new and gifted volunteers. Bob Jellin is the editor of our news journal, The Coupler, that just came out. It's published quarterly. And if you remember, you have the benefit of 32 pages, including in-depth coverage of the Chicago show. Scott Kozlowski is coordinating our website. And if you go on the website, you will see that there is a great deal of progress made. We use it both to introduce people who are not presently true rail O-scalers, as well as communicate with the community of people who are already modeling. We do have the scale-wide product and service guide. We have about 200 vendors, and the guide is sortable. You can, if you're interested in some particular part of O-scale, rolling stock, scenery, locomotives, whatever, you can sort the website for that and find out who's selling kits. Okay, and if you look, Skylar Shippey is giving us some update on the Sunset Third Rail shipment. But in any event, it is worth a trip to our website to see what's available, to make use of the product and service guide, which is provided free by O-Scale Central as a service to the scale. We have a new traction modeler, Ed Scucci, and he has just added about 10 traction vendors to the product and service guide. Skylar Shippey, our vice president, has started a club forum. Skylar wears several hats. One of them is as president of the Detroit Model Railroad Club. But we know that O-scale clubs have had a rough time the past few years. There are a lot of things happening, and we have started a forum for O-scale clubs to gather, kick around ideas, present problems for input, present solutions, and we're very excited to have that outreach. We want the O-scale true rail clubs do a great job of introducing people to the scale, and we are happy to be able to give them some support. Also on our website, by the way, is a list of coming attractions. for O-scale 2-rail modelers. And I would flag as part of that an entry that is just new enough to be included. I told you Skylar Shippey he wears several hats. One of them is Skylar is taking over from Sam Shoemaker, the Cleveland show. And Skylar, if you would tell us the dates of that show and tell us how to get information on it, I think that would be useful.
Yeah, so the dates for this year are different than last year. The venue had a different arrangement made with some group that meets on Wednesdays and Fridays. So that changes the Friday setup that we normally had. Forced me to make it a 2-day show, just to be fair to the vendors. I don't want to ask that to have a commitment for a single day. So the dates on this would be the 2nd and 3rd of November. And I got a flyer that's going to be going around. I got table reservation forms that I'd like to get published too. So yeah, the way to find that out, I'm probably going to work with David with O-scale Central on having that on the website. So look for that in the coming weeks.
We are looking forward to having the Cleveland show revitalized. I'm really appreciative of Skylar taking that on in addition to the other stuff that he's doing.
The one other
Last-
thing, I also
Go ahead.
have a Facebook page I created, so you can look it up on Facebook. Of course, Facebook's only for half the people, but that's something to get started with. So that's it.
Thank you. Speaking of Facebook, we do have a Facebook page, and we do have a modeler, Ryan Scheuer, who has volunteered and taken on our social media. And one of the things that he is doing is to make much more frequent postings on Facebook, and included in that is the 10-minute promotional video that O-scale Central put together in connection with the PCR virtual convention. And we are making that available for public download. So if you are, for example, going to have a booth or table at an all-scale show and want to show that video, you may do so. It'll be free to download and access. And if you have a club open house or any other event for which you simply want to have a way to introduce people to O-scale 2-rail, that is available for you. It is, as I said, free to download and free to use. We also have on the website an O-scale Central YouTube channel, and included on that channel and accessible, also free and open, we do have all of Terry Terrence's very well done O-scale 2-rail layout tours. So I invite you to go on there and make use of the channel. Now, we do have available, and what we'll do at the end of the program, what we do here at a point is adjourn the formal part of the meeting and then continue on as sort of a committee of the whole, talking about good and welfare. This is where you can make announcements, ask questions. And I've been trying to figure out how to solder Zamac. How do I do it? And we've got people on the call who can probably kibitz on that. But that will be at the conclusion of the meeting, which is coming up a little faster than normal because we have not been able to get in touch with Scott. Okay, now a couple of things. Number one, if you want to watch this or other O-Scale Central online meetings, this meeting is, as you saw when you came in, recorded, and it is posted up on the O-Scale Central YouTube channel and is available for viewing again. If you know people that you would want to have this show available for, you can tell them it will be posted. It takes a couple of weeks for us to edit it down and then get it up to so it can be viewed. The next meeting, the next online program will be June 9. We try and have these on the third Sunday of the month, but for reasons of travel, we just can't make it work there. I note, by the way, Paul Hansen put a note up on the chat that there is an Indianapolis O-Scale show coming up on September 21. And Paul, if you want to give us a quick rundown on that, you may, or since it's a ways off, we can wait until next month. Your call.
I'll just quickly say it's we still got tables available. This is basically a swap meet only as far as the hotel is concerned, but we are working on a few other outside events, including layout tours, and I do have one layout in St. Louis that has offered to have their show or their layout open the day before the show, so that if anybody is traveling through St. Louis can stop by and see their layout. And I asked that if anybody else in the surrounding couple states have their layout that they would like to be open, they could get a hold of me and let me know. There's a contact information on the website, IndieOScaleShow.com, and there's also a PDF registration form you can download.
Super. Thank you, Paul. All right. At this point, Joe, absolute. I had that on my notes. Joe Norman needs to bring us an update on one of the truly important long-term supporters of O-Scale Central, and before that, O-Scale Kings. Joe Norman.
George is not doing well.
This is George Wallace.
George Wallace, yes. Most of you probably know George. He's been around forever, which we tease him about all the time. George is in the hospital again, room 367 at Mercy Hospital here in Oklahoma City. They have stopped his medication and he is only getting morphine now. So we all know pretty much where that leads. So I would ask everybody to keep George in their thoughts and his family. His son is here, and I suspect his daughters are on their way.
George Wallace was the glue that held O-Scale Kings together during some very dark times. I think there were times when George was the only thing that was keeping it together, and we owe everything that we have been able to do now and are hoping to do in the future to the fact that at critical points in the organization's history, George was there. George and I are both Vietnam veterans. George flew F-105s in combat, and you know, he was the real deal. And I am sorry that he's coming to the end of his journey. I think he's what, 94?
92.
92 now, but I used to think there were good ways to die and good times to do it, but I've given up on that. There's never a good way and a good time, but George has been a terrific contributor over the years in a lot of different organizations, but particularly from our perspective in O Scale Kings and O Scale Central. So we give him our best wishes and hopes for an easy journey. So thank you very much for reminding me on that. I had forgotten to, even though I had written it down. All right, we are at this point at the end of the formal program. We will see if we can get Scott back next month, and we have several other folks in the pipeline. But for now, this is going to be the end of the formal program. We do have a tail on our program that's been traditional, and we will start by going around the room and having everybody introduce themselves. So at the end of the formal program, I'm gonna ask people who can stay and want to stay to tell us 3 sentences: what your name is, where you live, and what you model. And we will then have a discussion. I know we had some questions that came up before we convened, and certainly some questions that may come up as a result of our presentation from Phil and our anticipation of presentations from Skylar. Remember, if you would, that we're looking for volunteers. Get back to me from on the email that is on the website if you have any willingness to serve. We have a lot of fun, and we think we're doing some good things for the scale. So beginning toward the beginning of the alphabet, let's start. Who thinks they're at the top? And I'm going to give an example for what I do, and that is, I'm David Vaughn. I live in Clarksville, Maryland, and I model the nickel plate in Canandaigua Southern and OS2R. Who's at the beginning of the alphabet?
Well, I guess I'm B, so I can start. So this is Boo. Let me show my face again here. So I'm in Santa Clara and part of the O Scale West crew. I model mostly Northeastern Pennsylvania Railroad, New York Central, Erie, but also some Brazilian prototype.
Great. Jim Cantor is a C. Why don't you tell us?
Jim Cantor, Indianapolis. I model the nickel plate road in Proto 48. And at the conclusion of this meeting, I will be talking about this little articulated Golden Gate truck. Thank you.
Terrific. Joe Barker, tell us where you're at. Joe is muted. Well, let's try it the other way. Carl Sorensen, tell us where you're at.
I'm Carl Sorensen. I'm in Payette, Idaho, southwest Idaho, where there's not a lot of O-scalers. I'm second generation O-scaler. My father was MMR number 32, and I model mostly the Union Pacific because of what he modeled. Plus, I'm going into Great Northern too.
Super. Joe Norman.
I'm Joe Norman, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and I model the CB&Q, Santa Fe, and the Rio Grande.
Great. Skylar?
Skylar Shippey, live in Fenton, Michigan. Model the nickel plate and collect whatever else I like.
Glenn? You're muted, Glenn.
Yeah, Glenn Haug, Woodinville, Washington, and I've begun to model CB&Q.
Terrific. Andrew, unmute.
Andrew Dodge. I live near Albany, Maryland, and I've modeled the Denver South Pacific in 013, the Colorado Midland and O-scale Proto 48, and I've now changed that to Central Maine at Freelance Railroad, and also on Proto 48.
Terrific. Santiago.
They're all in the late 19th century time period.
Santiago Pineda here. Bogota, Colombia, South America. I model named passenger trains from the 1940s with a special interest in the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Pat Rivard.
I model 2-rail O-scale in northern in Chatham, Ontario, Canada, and it represents logging in northern BC.
Great. By the way, I didn't know this, but in the O-scale Trains Annual is not only a club list for United States O-scale clubs, but a list of Canadian O-scale clubs. And I believe there are like 10 different Canadian 2-rail O-scale clubs. I did not know. I knew about Toronto, but I didn't know about the others, and they're very impressive. Paul Hansen.
I'm Paul Hansen. I'm in Indianapolis, Southeast Indianapolis. I model Indiana Railroad post-coal modern in Proto 48.
Phil Taylor.
I'm Phil Taylor. I live in middle part of Virginia. I model both the nickel plate and the British Great Western. So I'm actually in 148th and 143rd. Both are O-scale, 2-rail.
Fantastic. Eric Peterson.
Eric Peterson, Carmel, Indiana. I model CSX and predecessors all the way back to steam, and enjoy being part of O-scale Central.
Charles?
Charles Goodrich, McKinney, Texas. I modeled Denver and Rio Grande Western, narrow gauge and standard gauge, with the smidgen of Southern Pacific thrown in.
We heard a little bit from Phil Endholm before, but anything you want to add?
Yeah, Phil Edholm, Pleasanton, California. I am an 030 modeler in modular. What you're seeing behind me is actually a module, and then do O-scale at the club in Pleasanton, California.
All right, we heard from several folks moving down the address list, but Bruce Blackwood we've not heard from. Bruce is muted. He may have stepped away. David Myford.
Hey, David Myford. Sorry, my video stopped. With Baltimore Society Model Engineers, in between modeling right now. So just whatever the club's working on. Thanks for being here.
Excellent. Marty McGregian. You with us? There he is. He's muted, but he's with us. Marty. Marty is muted. He's muted. All right. We can't seem to. Marty, you should be able to speak now. You're not muted anymore.
Now.
We're having some technical difficulties. Still no audio.
Yeah, I have a bandwidth problem here. And
Okay.
I have the mute button off. Okay.
Still not working. Marty is in basically Florida and heads up the Cocoa Beach RPM meet and models Union Pacific. Pam Larson. I don't know that we have Pam. We got somebody.
You've got Kent Larson. Pam's the world that lets me enjoy trains whenever I want to. Cost is a train trip across the country every now and then. I model the fictional PSNL Railroad and have using equipment from any railroad willing to loan it to me.
Well, if Pam will let you do trains anytime you want, keep that woman.
That I will.
All right, Ron Butcher. Tom Taylor. And Mark. All right, we have who we have and we don't have who we don't have. So thank you all for participating. I know that Greg Vigiano had a question before, and maybe we can play. We'll stump him. He wants to be able to solder Zamac, but there's probably a better way to ask that question. And why don't you throw it out there? Let's see if anybody's got any opinion.
Well, let me just say, Greg Vigiano, Alexandria, Virginia, and I'm modeling the Santa Fe Super Chief as a passenger train. And the reason the Zamac question came up is because, as everybody knows, the Super Chief had stainless steel sides, and to reproduce really faithfully the stainless steel appearance, it's pretty much impossible to do with paint. So what I've done is I've photo etched stainless steel foil, and the foil is actually dropped into these panels alongside the F unit, and this is an F unit, die-cast F unit from All Nation. But what I've done is, in order to make it an F7, I've cut out the tops, and I'm going to be dropping in the P&D detail parts. And to try to make it a little bit more faithful to the prototype, I've cut off the nose, because everybody knows that the All Nation nose is not really 100%. And I've done some a facelift on this unit and put on a P&D, if you can see it, a P&D nose. But what I need to do now, and here's the Zamac question, is I need to take off these ladders on the side, because they extend down a little bit too far and causes an interference problem with the leaf springs on the truck. So what I'd like to do is take the brass laser cut ladders and solder them to the die-cast Zamac body. So if anybody's got any suggestions on how to avoid gluing the ladders to the Zamac body, I'd appreciate some suggestions.
Greg, if you want my opinion, I wouldn't touch that die-cast metal with anything that would be too hot, because it's gonna melt right away.
Right.
I don't see a solution other than probably two-part epoxy, and that gives you a solid joint.
Okay.
I know you said you didn't want anything, any kind of glue.
Well, my backup plan, thanks, Santiago. My backup plan is to actually take the ladder, if you can see it here, and cut this one off, and then take the brass and solder it to a plate that'll go right where the chassis bolts to the frame. And I might not have said this before, but the reason why I wanted to go with the Zamek die-cast metal is because when you polish the sides, it starts to look very reflective like stainless steel. So these frames here all around the panel are actually going to look very, very close to the metallic stainless steel foil that's going to go in the panel areas.
Are you going to drill the holes in the side of the Zamek to put the ladders on?
No, well,
what I'm getting to is, can you cut the ladders off, make them out of brass, drill a hole through, and then put a brass plate on the back side and solder the ladder to the brass plate?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do, Andrew, but I'm not going to need to drill any holes. I'll just solder support in back of it to bring it up to the plate and bolt it in place.
Okay.
And I only need to do it for the two ladders that are near the trucks. The end ladders don't matter. They're not going to interfere with the truck travel movement.
Yeah, I don't think you can solder to Zamek, but you can drill a hole and put brass on the inside and solder brass to the outside. So you could fix the piece of brass or with solder.
I was looking at that little part inside of the shell body that you showed us. Yeah. What you could do also is drill a hole through that and then have maybe like a screw and bolt that is going to hold that brass plate to which the ladder is going to be soldered to.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Boo. I kind of agree with the last comment there, at least with the one with the cab there where you have that ledge. You could use an angle brass, solder the step to the angle brass and screw that to that ledge.
Yeah,
I don't know if the rear one would work. I also want to mention, because I just happened to read something yesterday evening in an old model railroader from 1963 I picked up, and somebody asked about castings having been broken, if they could solder them. And this answer to this question was written by Gordon Odegaard, I think. First thing he says is to use epoxy, but he says that some zinc alloy casting can be soldered using regular tin lead solder and a flux called Salmet. And I don't know if this flux is called Salmet is still available, but he said it depends very much on the composition of the Zamek itself, if it will work or not.
Thank you. I'll report back. I'll show everybody at the next meeting what my progress is, but I don't mean to take more than my time for this meeting with that question. But thank you to everybody that responded.
Carl Sorensen had a question about speeders, and it had several parts, but one of the discussions we had was that at a point back in the not that long ago, Rich Yoder imported a speeder and a material handling car that would go behind it.
They said they called it a trailer. They were just, yeah.
Okay, and he wanted to know, has anybody have any of those? Has anybody seen them? And does it have a motor in it? He wasn't sure, and I'm not sure. Anybody got any knowledge about that? Any thoughts about it? Going once, going twice.
Sorry, I don't.
Jim Cantor, you had something to do show and tell for
before you jump to Jim.
Yes. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say I do have a set of Rich Yoder's speeders buried somewhere down in the basement. I thought they were powered through the trailer.
Okay. Well, your Bruce, your homework assignment before the next program is to go down in the basement, try and avoid getting hit by falling overland boxes that are over your head, and see if you can dig those out and give us a report.
See what I can do.
Thank you.
Jim, what you got?
Hi, David. Just a moment ago, you guys were talking about the helium car. And the helium car is one that I'm actually putting in the ball bearings in the trucks. And what that is looking like right now is you can see the bearing right here, and it will fit inside this truck. That I think that car weighs somewhere around 40 pounds. So there had to be some way to be able to move it. And it's a brass car that I think is totally solid brass. But beyond that, is one of the things that I enjoy is working with small bearings. And some of the manufacturers recently started putting roller bearings and ball bearings in their trucks and their passenger cars. So one of the things that I have recently done is, you can see this truck right here is a Golden Gate. And so they are, to make them articulated, is I'm putting in a new bolster in all these. So I'm having 200 of these bolsters made. And so they will be able to equalize. So if someone's interested, just reach out to me and let me know, and we will have some extras made for everyone. So thank you.
Now, is that the regular passenger truck that Golden Gate has, or is that something else?
This is a Golden Gate passenger truck that comes off of their passenger trains. And
Okay.
so what I do is I take out that solid bolster and I put in this machine bolster. It's really kind of old school, that lets the truck equalize. And it also gives you the correct height for the couplers. It makes the car run smoother. This will roll down a 1% grade. So if you want to pull a 12 to 20 car passenger train, once you put the ball bearings in, they will roll very nicely. So in taking those trucks, I can push these trucks and they'll run 100 feet around my layout very easily just by one push.
Same as your California Zephyr, Jim?
Yes. Yeah. Had guys over the other night, same thing. You just take the train, and once you push it, it'll roll 100 feet. And but it makes it on your motive power, it doesn't have to work as hard. It's not, so it makes equipment run a lot better.
Now
Jim,
that's
what's the outside diameter of that ball bearing?
The ball bearing that I have here is, let me find it again. This particular axle right here is a 3 millimeter. Okay. And this bearing on the inside is a 3 millimeter. On the outside is a 6 millimeter. And so all you do is just mill out the side frame, and which is a fairly simple process. And you can insert that 6 millimeter. For me, I use the Grabowski scale wheel, and I just slip that little bearing right over that axle. And there you go. Slide that back into the side frame here. And all of a sudden I have roller bearing or ball bearing trucks.
I've been doing that with the P&D trucks for my diesels. I found ball bearings, I think they're 3/16 OD, and same ID as the P&D axle. And just drilling out the side frames and putting the ball bearings in. You do have to put wipers on your wheels, because it'll arc going through the ball bearings and wear them out in a hurry.
That is correct. But as far as cars, it really works out well. But the cars will travel down on their own without motive power on a 1% grade.
Yeah,
so
the same
it does
thing
work
with the
out.
diesel.
So if you're pulling long trains, 40, 50 cars, it makes easy work of your steam locomotives.
That's true. It works really good on a diesel too, because the diesel's heavy, and the wheel friction is the highest point where the weight is the heaviest and creates the most friction. So replacing the bearing gives you a lot of bang for the buck.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Anybody got comments or questions? If they are not, we can pull the plug on the Zoom call.
I do have one thing.
Yes.
I'm working on some Sunset Third Rail E units, and I'm almost a little hesitant to say what I need to do. I have a Pennsylvania E8 that I need to strip down to make a UP. I know there'd be some guys mad at me for that. But I need to figure out how to take the windows out without damaging them. And if anybody had any good ideas and a good idea on stripping the Sunset model. Crickets. Okay.
No, Carl, if the paint is lacquer based, what I've done, because I had to do that with the All Nation bodies, I went to the hardware store, I think it was Lowe's or Home Depot, and I got these heavy large Ziploc bags that they use for like storing clothing, and they have a vacuum attachment where they can crush down. And I put the bodies in that bag, and then poured the lacquer thinner into it and sealed the bag and let them sit for a few minutes. And it really stripped them down nicely with no mess. And then just I had another bag with a cleaner bunch of lacquer thinner, and that kind of like was the rinse, and it took it out. But if the plastic, if the windows are plastic, I would think that the lacquer thinner probably would not hurt them, but it's better to probably discard the plastic windows and use microscope slide glass, and use like real glass for the windows, and you can cut it with a glass cutter to size.
Mm-hmm.
And there's even for the portholes, there's a 10 millimeter microscope slide glass that, at least for the F7, is an exact fit. And then you just need some watch crystal cement to set it in there, and it's like real glass.
Okay. I do have a friend that does the slides in HO, so I can get some ideas from him on that too.
Okay. I got everything on Amazon, so if you just know what to search for, everything's on Amazon.
On Amazon.
Yeah.
Even got a motor car part from on Amazon, but
yeah.
Carl?
Yes.
I once removed the side windows from my F7s, my third rail F7s. And what I did is I pushed them in from the outside, being very careful, putting like a real soft cloth and something that wouldn't scratch them.
Okay.
The problem with slides that Greg is mentioning is that because it's a plastic shell, it's going to be too thick to use slides without having the shell look out of scale. But I would also contact Scott because he has a lot of spare parts. So he may be able to fix you up with a set of windows for your unit.
Okay.
But if anything, I would try pushing them in with a real soft cloth and see if they pop in. In my experience, their glue is not as permanent as Atlas, which I think uses CA. So yeah.
Yeah, I found a lot of things like the far end grills are able to be removed. So I was hoping there was an easy way on the glass, but I'll try the gentle push first and see what happens.
And contact Scott. He's always he always listens.
I have, and some of the things I've talked to him about, he had no idea. So, and that was, I won't get into detail on what it was about, but it was a simple question, but he just hadn't even thought about it before. So
I see.
That's why he didn't have an answer. I feel like I'm working in a strange land, so doing some of the stuff on it.
So David, this is Phil. I might share one thing. This is kind of a preview. This article will be in the NMRA magazine in June.
Oh.
It's basically a discussion of how area and detail impact your choice of scales and modeling, and kind of how you idealize that, and then a bit of discussion how, you know, doing branch lines and narrow gauge allows you to model in a larger scale a smaller area, and therefore get the benefit of the detail. This essentially it's a three-dimensional exponent, a third order exponent for detail versus scale. So that was one thing I wanted to share. Something else, I don't know if people operate, show you a couple of pictures, but this is a, actually my background doesn't do it very well. Let me share my screen again here, and I will, that way I can show you a couple of pictures of this. So this is basically what I was showing you. It's a flashlight, Amazon special, and a 3D printed collar that essentially holds a standard skewer cut off shorter. And then when you turn the light on, the light essentially projects out around that. And got a little video here of how this works for uncoupling in ON30. So
cool.
If that's of interest to folks who are operating, I'm eventually going to put it up on Thingiverse and hopefully have someone where you can buy them if you want to just buy them instead of try to print them yourself. So
neat. By the way, about 2 years ago, I wrote an article for the NMRA magazine called O Positive, which was a sort of a survey of what was then going on in O scale and telling all of the good things about it. This is obviously a much more focused and scientific approach to it, but I think that's neat.
It's kind of the argument that if you look at scale, we think of scale in a singular dimensional sense, you know, i.e. 187th, 148th, you know, et cetera. In reality, scale is always going to be some form of exponent. If you look at the area you can model, it's essentially, you know, a second order exponent or a square. And so if you look at, there's a chart there, if you think about it from O, going from O to HO, you can actually model about 7 times as much area. Or excuse me, about 3 point something times as much area. But if you look at detail is a cube relationship. So when you go from HO to O, you actually get 7.6 times as much detail in your models. So, you know, it's a really interesting, the relationship between those when you choose what to model. If you're building a model railroad, if you want to model something that's huge, long trains, big yards and that, it's very challenging to do it in a larger scale. But if you want to model detail, then you can choose a larger scale, but then choose a prototype to model that has a smaller context, i.e. a branch line or a narrow gauge. And you get that kind of the value that comes in twofold. One is the equipment's much smaller, but the second is that the typically modeled structures are smaller. So, you know, the bigger the railroad, the bigger the structures have to be to generate the service volume, to generate the prototypical reality of having the environment. So it's kind of, that was a bit of the argument, is that, you know, O scale is ideal, but you may want to choose a different prototype based on your choice of scale.
Thank you.
If that makes sense to anybody.
Look forward to it in the NMRA magazine.
It's actually available online already.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Actually, yeah, I thought it was a great, you know, I thought it was a better place to promote things there than, you know, put it there as kind of a first place to put it, because you get a number of modelers that are hopefully will be interested.
Good. Yeah. You know, I regard the NMRA membership as being potential converts to Rail O. So whatever we can do to proselytize would be good. All right, going once,
I have a
going twice.
question. I have a question, David. Does
Okay.
anybody know where I could get clear plastic parts for a Lionel GP30 shell? I've got a GP30 that I've two-railed, and I don't have any glass for it with the windshields and side windows. Lionel does not have that anymore in their inventory.
Possibility of perhaps getting some laser cut rather than trying to find something already done suggests itself.
Yeah, being the plastic shell, you have to have the ones that's cast, that inserts into the cavities from the back, so that it comes out flush on the outside.
Anybody got any thoughts?
Aren't there some companies that sell various Lionel reproduction parts? No, I'm not an expert in this area, but I know I've been to some train shows where I saw people selling this stuff a few years ago.
I don't know, I hadn't found it online yet.
Anything else?
Any of you guys looked at Blue Namis for using for O-scale?
I
Now
just
that there's
got 2 engines converted to Blue Namis. I haven't done it with the phone yet, but they work just like the 4400s that I've been using.
I've
Oh, yeah,
heard
it's
good
basically-
things I've heard good things from the New York Society guys. They've used a bunch of them.
I use Rail Pro, and it looks like a lot of their ideas on the Blue Nami is very similar to the Rail Pro.
Yeah, what makes Blue Nami really cool is if you can use your phone as your, call it for lack of a better word, programming system for the DCC in your engines. Because it's a much
Yeah,
more intuitive interface. It's built to soundtracks to start with, and it's a much more intuitive interface than JRMRI. So, you know, you've got, and then the other thing is I was over at Frank Markovich's layout, and he's got an, you know, ON3 logging layout. Has had nothing but electrical problems for years, and he's gone to battery and Blue Nami. And he literally said he tore all the wires out from under his layout.
Yeah.
And he's happy as a clam.
Participated in one clinic and done one of my own on Blue Namis before the 4400 equivalent came out, using S-scale as the primary host, because it was the largest thing I could find to put it in, but for the amperage issue. And I'm looking at battery on board as my next target. So that's why I kind of started with that question. So
I've got a battery powered Atlas switcher that is Blue Nami and battery powered, and it works great.
okay.
And if I'm not mistaken, it was their 2200 series, because Atlas only pulls less than 2 amps.
Oh, okay.
A good Atlas switcher before they screwed it up.
Well, yeah, I was unwilling to take the chance, I guess, at that point. I'm going to use it for a public demonstration, as I did it at a joint meet with another division. So
Yeah, this is a single motor Atlas.
yeah. Well, yeah, non-China drive. Yeah.
Yes.
As I said, I use the Rail Pro, and I've been using on the Sunset 3 rail, and I am dead rail also. And it seems to work great, sounds great. So just another option.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have not done the Blue Nami, but I've done the 4400s, and they're good decoders. And I mean, the Blue Nami is basically a power sucking alien. So it's a 4400 decoder with an extra chip on it. It's basically what it is, or a couple of chips. So, you know, it should be great. We have a guy at our club who's doing a couple of them right now with Blue Namis. So at 4400s, that's doing Sunset engine rebuilds, but not with batteries.
Kent here from Belmont. I use the Rail Pro too, and I like it because Rail Pro only wants a power source. It doesn't care if it's 12 volts DC, 14 volts from a AC DC system or battery. It's terrific. It's radio control to the locomotive. Don't care how clean the track is, it just works.
I think the one frustration I have with Blue Nami, and maybe this is just me, I spend way too much time on my phone. The last thing in the world I want to do is to have my hobby become some additional time I need to spend on my cell phone.
Well, I will say using the iPad, which is actually my favorite thing to use with it, because the print's larger and my vision, as you know, David, is not what it used to be. It never has been good to begin with, but I spend a lot less time sitting there watching JRI with the equivalent of the spinning, processing type marker, downloading, and then the God Forever uploading, and the same with ESU and their unit. So it definitely, that will save you time somewhere else. So, but I understand this frustration with the phone. If you work in IT, I understand that immensely, as I do. So
The nice thing about Blue Nami is it's a dual system. It could either be used with your phone or use DCC. And like you said, you could use it at your home layout with the phone, and you could take it to your friend's layout that might not be compatible and use your phone. All you need is a 12 volt DC. Actually, it's not even specific 12 volt. Just needs a DC or DCC power source. And
I noticed Carl Sorensen is showing his Pennsylvania Railroad E-unit. That's probably the only Pennsylvania Railroad unit in Idaho.
Actually, we have an HO scaler that's very Pennsylvania. So, but yeah, I was pushing on the port windows and they're not coming out. So,
okay.
The way I'm doing the battery is I'm going in through the steam generator in the back. So, and the other thing on the Rail Pro is that they will consist without any effort. You don't have to figure out CVPs. I don't know how Blue Nami is, but they're talking between each other. So if you have a unit as a helper in the very back of your train, it will talk to the lead unit on what it needs. And very, very impressed on looking at Rail Pro on YouTube. Anyway, I'm taking up too much time.
You're fine. Thank you.
All right. Are we talked out? If so, I want to thank everybody for your time and participation. This is what O-Scale community is all about. We will follow up with Scott Mann. He was on the program, I guess, about a year ago, and was very forthcoming and informative, and we're going to try and get him back again. I'm not sure where it came off the tracks, so to speak, but it did. We'll pick it up, and hopefully we'll see you guys on June 9.